I'm Charlie Bright of Gold Derby, and today I'm speaking with Kurt Albrecht, one of the producers of the Mitchells versus the Machines, which is currently streaming on Netflix as part of Gold Derby's Meet the Experts panels for film animation. First question I wanted to ask you was, how did Michael, the director of the movie, come to mix his love of cinema into a family tale about averting a global robotic takeover?
Well, one of the things that attracted me to the movie most was that it was filmmaker driven, and Mike Rianda, he says he came to Sony to develop this movie and was working on it. He started in 2015, I think. So working on the script, coming up with ideas, and he was on a road trip and he came up with the idea, one of the things I love, and he's like, well, I love my crazy family and I love killer robots. So he literally just took those two things together, came up with a story, and that was his pitch way back, just to get the whole ball rolling. And then he worked with Jeff Rowe, his writer, his co-writer, and co-director, and they worked on the script and came up with there's been many versions of it, but what you saw, so it really was Mike just choosing things he loved and working with those.
I think the cast of the movie is really fantastic, including people like Abby Jacobson, Danny McBride, and Maya Rudolph, and Beck Bennett. But I really was taken by the choice of Olivia Colman voicing Pal, and I was curious as to what were you and Michael looking for in the voice for Pal that led you to casting Olivia Colman in that role?
How can you go wrong with Olivia Colman, right?
Besides the obvious.
No, you wanted someone in that role who could be, menacing, a baddie, but also have heartwarming moments, with her creator, and then when she's debating with Katie at the end, like the value of humanity, essentially, she is an amazing actress, and she even did. I have to say that we did get her, and it was a amazing. I think she had won the Academy Award right when she accepted the offer, so it was like that was an amazing thing. But then when we got into the records, her willingness to, have fun with the character and give us more than we ever expected is amazing. She really brought a lot to Pal. And the scene where she's flipping around and just screaming, I mean, come on, right?
It's one of those things where sometimes I wish that you had like cameras in the recording booth so you could see what it looks like while they're recording it.
Exactly. Yeah, we had a lot of our records, as Tom was saying, like doing these films during COVID was tricky, and we did a lot of records with people in their homes because they couldn't come into studios or come to Sony to do the records. So it was a lot of those were in her bedroom with her big puffy bed behind her. So it's kind of surreal. It's great though.
One of the other interesting casting choices is that Michael actually does voice the son in the movie Aaron, and he's really funny in that role. How did he end up coming to voice Aaron? Well,
when we were making the movie, you start, before you hire any actors, you're using scratch performers or just people around the studio to build rough cuts of the film, early story days. And Mike is a really good actor, and he was most of the characters in the movie at one point when we were doing those early cuts. And we started casting, and we tried different people in the Aaron role, not cutting different options in, and it was, no one quite got the sweetness the way Mike did, and there was a lot of concern initially about that he sounds too much like a man, and it was, we did work a lot to make him be young, and Mike worked on it a lot. His warm up was always hello. He would just get into his little Aaron voice. But it was something that we did debate. Is it the right thing to do to not have an actual child in there? But Mike gave the heart and gave the comedy equally important, to get that. And that was something that he was really concerned with, and that's why we ended up going with him. But it was I think it all came out really well. They feel like a real family.
Oh yeah, no, that chemistry comes off very very clearly. Um, what was the process like of designing the robots for this movie? Because they have such a wonderful, distinctive look to them. And of course, you also throw in, people like Beck Bennett and Fred Armisen helping to voice them, and that's like the cherry on top. But what was it like to design those characters?
It's funny you ask about the robots, like the helper bot, the main ones. We had initial designs that were in the story reels, so it was something that was done really quickly. And then we hadn't even had the full production design team on in the early days. And once those people came on and more artists came on, we started to iterate on the robot design, and we did stuff that was more kind of pushed, more designy, ones that were more mechanical, all these different things. And we ended up doing all of that work and came back around to what was very close to the initial design that you see in the film. So it was this long road of like pushing away from that, getting to something that was more mechanical, more slick, and then coming back around to what Mike had initially. He didn't draw it, but it was something that was done by one of the first artists that just came on and was like, this feels like a robot that a big corporation would design for consumer use. And it just, it never varied very much to the very end.
And I'm also curious as to did the nailing the pug in it, but nailing that design, was that something that like happened like in terms of like when you were looking at designs like right away, or did it take a couple of tries to get that look of absolute insanity right?
Well, that's Monchi is actually, there was a Monchi in Mike's family. I think it was his aunt's dog. And they've had pugs in his family for a long time. So he had a very specific idea in mind, the big eyes, the wall-eyedness. So I think we got very close very quickly. But then in building the CG version of Monchi, getting like the little, remember there was a lot of time spent on the little butt swirls, the little in the little hair, and how long the hair, how short the hair. So it was a lot of refining of the finer points. The teeth, the little chipped teeth in the front, they're not always there. They come and go. How big the tongue is. Like there was a lot of refinement of the small things, but like the main shapes were very quick to arrive to. And then giving him the animators the controls they needed so he could get all of the performance he wanted out of Monchi, because he's a pretty important character in the film. And before we were on lockdown, we actually had a couple test screenings with audiences, and he tested through the roof every time. Favorite character, Monchi. So that was a big studio note throughout the making of the film. More Monchi.
Well, speaking of Monchi and the Mitchells, do you think it's possible that we might see the Mitchell family return in another adventure at some point?
We're talking about it for sure, trying to get the right people on board. But yes, there's it's done well, for Netflix for sure. And there's certainly talk of it. Nothing's official yet, but we're working on it.
And just one other question I had about Michael is how close was his personal family experience to the family dynamic of the Mitchells? How close? Do you know how close that was?
It's pretty close. His father, Brian, is not unlike Rick in many ways. And he is kind of the one of the designs, like the design of Rick's jacket, that yellow jacket that he wears. There's a photo of his dad, and we just use that as the reference for the design of the character. Also, like it's hard to talk about these things, hard to talk about emotion. That's definitely Mike's dad. He's not one to show emotion, and we did have a screening for Mike's family that I got to go to when the movie was done, and Mike stole some photo of his dad tearing up in the movie. So that was Mike's victory dance right there. So they're pretty close, and the Maya's character is really based on Mike's aunt and his mom kind of combined, but this incredible high energy mom that he has is, so it's pretty close, I would say. There's a lot of personal stories drawn from his life that are in the film, outside of the robot apocalypse, of course.
Give it time.
That's right.
Well, Kurt, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And we look forward to seeing you on our panel in just a little bit.
All right, see you in a bit, Charlie.